Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video, and in this video, I'm actually joined by the legendary Karl Kesel. For those who don't know, Karl is an American comic book writer and inker. He's actually the creator of King Shark, who will be appearing in the upcoming James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. He's being played by Sylvester Stallone and Steve Agee. But he's also appearing in the new Suicide Squad video game as well. Not only is he known for creating King Shark, he's also the creator of Kon-El, that version of Superboy, and his newest comic, Impossible Jones, which we will be discussing in detail. We'll be going right deep into it. But he's also the writer of comics such as Daredevil, Harley Quinn, Hawk and Dove, Superman, Superboy, Section Zero, and he's the inker of comics such as Suicide Squad, amongst so many more. But he's very kindly agreed to come on and let me annoy him. So, Karl, thank you so much. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Daniel. How are you?
Good. Like I said, he did have to take a seat because he just saw professionalism at its finest, and you can tell it registered on him. Don't feel intimidated, as I'm sure you can see. It's just the stature, and I'm only messing around. So my first question for you is, how did you get into comics?
Well, excuse me. I mean, it's just something I've wanted to do since I was very young. I mean, the secret origin story is my family took a cross-country trip in America from New York State to California and back in 1969. I was 10 years old, and there was a 1-month trip sitting in a Dodge van. And there were long days sitting in that car, long days driving across the vast expanse of America. And I was bored out of my mind. But at the time, when you had to get gas for your car, and when you stopped for your gas, the gas stations had spinner racks like that.
Yes.
And they were full of comics. And that's what my dad would give me a quarter, and I'd run in and I could get two comics for a quarter. And I would start reading them, and because that's what I was doing to pass the time. And by the end of the month, the gas stations, they wouldn't be returning their comics. No one was paying any attention to it. So they could have quite a few back issues sitting there. So over the course of the month, I got like maybe 2, maybe 3 issues in a row of Spider-Man or Fantastic Four. And I started to see how everything connected. And that got me hooked. By the end of that trip, I knew I wanted to be a cartoonist.
Wow.
And that's what I devoted myself to ever since.
Yeah, and I think it worked out fine enough. I think that's fair to say.
I can pay the bills, so I can't complain,
But were there any specific comics you liked? The Spider-Man's, the Fantastic Fours?
Well, the Fantastic Four was one of my very first favorite comics. I really just loved it. I came in right at the tail end of Kirby's run, but I have like this real fondness for the 3-part The Skrull Takes a Slave story, where the Skrulls come and they kidnap Ben, and then they take him to this world of like science fiction gangsters who run gladiator games. And when I was a kid, I ate that up. I thought that was the best story in the whole world.
I'm sure. But so how do you even get a break into comics? How did you get your start?
Well, I went to I went to the Joe Kubert School of Comic Art in New Jersey,
Yes.
and I went there in 1977. I would have been in the second graduating class, except I got there and everyone was so damn talented, and I like thought, I can't compete with these guys. I mean, really. I mean, there was Steve Bissette, there was John Toddleben, Ron Randall was there, Kim DeMolder was there. There was a lot of people who've gone on to have real great careers. And I was looking at what they were doing, and I just couldn't compete. I knew I couldn't compete. So I actually left and I went to a fine arts college and tried to figure out what else I wanted to do with my life. But I just kept drifting back to the comics. I'd go to the drugstore with my girlfriend, and oh look, John Byrne is doing X-Men now. That's really cool. And I was just sucked right back in, and I realized that's really where my heart was. And so I had to really buckle down, double down to do it, to really rise to the level that I saw in evidence at the Kubert School. And so I did, and I moved down to New York City, lived in a little teeny tiny apartment, and I got this day job working in a production shop at a typesetting place. And every night I'd come home and I was doing inking samples. By that point, I figured my easiest route in was as an inker. I felt my inking abilities were stronger than my writing abilities, and certainly stronger than my penciling abilities. And so I started doing a lot of inking samples, and my job was like 5 blocks from the Marvel offices. So after work, I could take my little Xeroxes up and drop them off. I couldn't get past but I could label the address to, label the envelope to one of the editors, and they would get it. And then sooner or later, some of them got back to me. And I was very lucky because at DC at that time, they were running a new talent program where they were actually actively looking for new talent. And it was really a case of me being in the right place at the right time. Sal Amendola, who is running the new talent program, took a liking to my work, brought me under his wing. I did a lot of work for the New Talent Showcase book that was coming out at the time. And by the end of that year, by the end of 1983, I got my first full-time assignment inking Tales of the Legion of Superheroes. And the first 6 issues of that was penciled by Terry Shoemaker, who's an amazing artist. And the second 6 issues of that was penciled by a guy named Dan Jurgens, who I have no idea what happened to him. Never, he just kind of faded away.
What's a Dan Jurgens? Who?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I mean, people, I get that blank look all the time when I say his name.
Yeah, I mean, if only he wrote a big comic like Batman or one of the bigger characters, maybe know him. It's a missed opportunity, but yeah, I suppose we might have to carry on. But of course, so there's so many different comics to cover. So first off, let's talk about your newest comic, Impossible Jones. What can you tell us about that?
Sorry. Well, what I can tell you is it's a comic very near and dear to my heart. I have a ton of fun working on it. It's being penciled by David Hahn, who has worked on Batman 66 and Bike Club for DC, and he's just an amazing artist. I've actually known him about 20 years. And from the very first time I saw him, I loved his work. It was very clean, very modern, really dynamic and interesting. So a few years ago when I heard he was looking for work, I said, why don't we do something together? There's this Kickstarter thing out there. I think we can make a go of it. And we kickstarted the first Impossible Jones book, which right here, happened to have a copy.
It's just lying around. It drops down.
So, but the idea of Impossible Jones is that she is a thief. She's on a job. An accident happens, and when she wakes up, she's not dead, which by all accounts she should be. In fact, she's gained powers, and her first instinct is to use these powers not to fight crime. No, she wants to use these powers to get payback on the sons of bitches who left her behind for dead.
Yeah.
And so she goes after her old gang. But here's the thing is, from the outside looking in, she's going after criminals. So people start saying, hey, you're a hero, right? You're going after the bad guys. You must be a hero. And she's like, oh, if that's what you want to think, I'm not gonna complain. I'm not gonna disagree with you. And she kind of falls into being mistaken for a superhero. And she sees great potential in this. Let me put it that way, because she enjoys being a thief. She's very good at being a thief. The new powers make her even better at being a thief. And being considered a hero means she can walk into the police station and they tell her what they're up to. And she gets an idea of where they're all over on the east side. So if I go on the west side, I got it pretty much to myself, or she can go into a jewelry store and say, what kind of security system you got here? I'm just curious. And they're happy to tell her. And so, hijinks result from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how did that even come about? One day, did you just wake up and say, I have this idea for a comic? Is that how it came about?
In this case, actually, you're absolutely right. I mean, I literally woke up one morning with this idea in my head. And I will say it's not all from me. I mean, I woke up one morning and knew how I would do Plastic Man, because Plastic Man, if you remember his origin, he was a crook. He was Eel O'Brien. He's on a job. He gets shot. He falls into a vat of acid. How he got plastic powers out of falling into a vat of acid, I will never know. But he wakes up, he has plastic powers, and his first thought is, I will fight crime. And I woke up one morning and I said, no. When he woke up, he shouldn't have said he was going to fight crime. He should have said, I'm going to get the sons of bitches who left me behind for dead. And that's where I got the idea of someone mistaken for a superhero and who decides to just roll with it and see where it takes them.
And I believe I believe that there's a Kickstarter for it.
For the one what I'm talking about, for Impossible Jones?
Not Plastic Man, Impossible Jones.
For Impossible Jones, yes, there is, yeah. So and I have to say the other part of Impossible Jones, I'd had great fun writing Harley Quinn. She's such a vibrant character, so full of life. And I missed it. I missed writing that sort of character. So I took that sort of character and combined it with my new spin on how you could approach Plastic Man.
Yeah.
Folded them together and I came up with Impossible Jones. And as you said, right now there's a Kickstarter going for the second book. You can get the first book. If you missed this baby, you can still get it. But we are now kickstarting the second, and it's not a hardcover graphic novel like this. We're actually kickstarting a floppy comic. It's now a 40-page comic with 28, 4, 32, at least 32 and maybe 36 pages of story. We're at a point of a stretch goal where we will add pages to the book if we meet the stretch goal.
Brilliant. So if anyone would like to check that out, link for that in the description. You see, if we're very good at promoting stuff like that. You know, comics, they just appear out of thin air. You know, not to brag, as I'm sure you can see it comes through very well. And so yeah, like obviously back in the 90s or a million years ago when all those old comics existed. No, I'm only messing, just to make it. So yeah, so back around then, obviously Kickstarter and crowdfunding didn't exist. So yeah, and nowadays it's kind of super simple to do that. So was that kind of hard for you to transition and then like, oh, I can just use this method into making a new comic?
Well, I mean, when I first did it, which was for the Section Zero book that I kickstarted, I was scared to death. I had no idea how to do it. But you know, Tom Grumman, we really wanted to do some more Section Zero, and we had to find a way that we would earn money to do it, because I mean, a place like Image Comics would have let us do Section Zero, but they wouldn't have given us any money. We could have done it for Dark Horse. We could have done it for IDW. I did talk to IDW, but all of them said, well, you know, we maybe could give you like $100 a page, and between Tom and me, we can't live off of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the hope was Kickstarter would actually raise enough money that we could pay our bills and do what we love. And we were phenomenally lucky. You know, quite honestly, that first Kickstarter for Section Zero, I didn't know what I was doing. And on the very last day of the Kickstarter, we raised over a third of the amount of the money we needed for the book. I was convinced it was not going to fund. And on the very last day, like the social media beast woke up, and we raised $15,000 on that last day. And I was like stunned. I was stunned. And there's been no looking back ever since. I mean, that's really how I've been earning my living ever since.
Yeah, and like it's one thing to write on a comic such as Daredevil because he has a history. He is Daredevil. You can't break up his canon. But when it comes to Impossible Jones, she's your character. So did you feel a certain sense of free reign as opposed to other comics with pre-existing characters? Because it's like it has to fit into this very niche lore and it has to all blend together very well. But with Impossible Jones, you can essentially do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, we can. I mean, you know, you figure out the tone you want in the book, and you know, I think because of my training and because of my natural likenesses, I write fairly. I don't write really edgy stuff. You're not going to get a Garth Ennis story out of me. I love Garth's stuff, but a lot of times I read Garth going, how does his mind work? My mind does not work the way his mind works, you know. So my stuff is fairly family friendly. Overall, I will say in Impossible Jones, you know, David and I talked a lot because given that she's a thief, I felt she would have, you know, she would swear. I felt she would swear. She would have a little more earthy language than, you know, Spider-Man would have.
Yeah.
And I've always hated when they use like ampersand, $, you know, squiggle line. I always hate when they use that for swearing. And yet I didn't want to have those words in the book because I have 2 children, 7 and 9 years old, and I know they're going to want to read the book. And I was like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? How can we have her swear yet? And what we ended up doing, and I don't even think I can find it, is we decided to
kind of put tape across
redact it. We redact it, yeah, with a black bar.
Yeah, I really like that. I was looking, yeah.
The thing I like about that is, I think I got a page. Yeah, right up here.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that kind of caught my eye, and I enjoyed looking at that because I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And so yeah,
the thing I like about that is it's just as much of an affectation as the $ ampersand is. But I feel there's a certain slyness to this that plays into the tone of the book. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my justification for it. But I will tell you, my 8-year-old, he was reading the book, and when he got to those pages, he would look at those bars. He would look, and then he would say, "Did she just say?" And he was so proud he had figured it out. You know, he was so proud. And I felt that was fine. I felt that was fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, I drop F-bombs on the channel all the time, so you as I'm sure you can see, they tried to stop me, it never works. I've reached that a certain level of power. No, I'm only messing. So yeah, if anyone would like to go check out the Kickstarter, that'd be down in the description. So yeah, do you prefer working on your own characters as opposed to pre-existing characters, or do you like them both equally?
Well, I mean, at this point, I would say I certainly prefer my own characters, although there's always a great thrill, to work on a Superman, a Batman, a Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, because those are characters that you grew up with. And, it's like, if you grew up as a fan of a certain baseball team or a certain basketball team and then getting a chance to play on that team, how can you say no to that?
Yeah.
But then you get a chance to create your own team, you know what I mean? And they're both very exciting and in their own way. I would say working on Impossible Jones and Section Zero and some of my other creator-owned characters, it's much more satisfying, far more satisfying than on a deep personal level than working on Daredevil that I had a lot of fun on, or Fantastic Four, which was a childhood favorite of mine. Yes. But I would choose creator-owned over the work for hire any day at this point.
Yeah, and are you the inker on that comic as well?
Which on Impossible Jones?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I ink over David.
Writer and inker. Can't catch a break there. And I imagine David is the colorist as well?
No, we have Tony Avina is the colorist. Tony and David had worked on a Batman 66 project together. And I asked David, I said, who do you want to color this book? And he said, I want Tony Avina. He did the best job on anyone in the mainstream comics had done. And so we approached Tony, and Tony was more than happy to help us out. And I have to say, we're paying our bills, but we're not becoming millionaires off of this. Every single one of us is not earning what we would earn at Marvel or DC to work on this book. But we are masters of our own ship, so we have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, yeah, you do have that. But did you reach Kickstarter fully funded? I believe there's 3 days left as of time of recording.
Yeah, for the second Impossible Jones book, yeah, we have 3 more days. It'll end on what day is it? The 8th. It ends on the 8th, Thursday the 8th, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in America. So I don't know what that is for you.
It's not my problem. I don't find out times. No one hasn't.
But yeah, so that's when it ends. It ends on Thursday, late Thursday Pacific Time, 7. So we still have a few days. I mean, we have already funded the comic and reached quite a few stretch goals. Like I said, we've added a backup story. We're looking to add some more pages to the backup story right now. Yeah. We have stickers that are going to people. We're going to have this little poster, and one of the stretch goals is now it's a big poster. So I'm really excited about all that stuff. And it's this is part of the fun of Kickstarter is, to figure out all these weird things that I would like to get, and maybe you would like to get too,
Yeah.
Like as soon as I thought of the big poster, I was going, oh, I hope we can raise enough money to do that. And we did. So that was really exciting.
Eventually, did you get a bit worried and you were like, okay, if we reach 10,000, everyone gets a stapler and orange as well. Hand delivered. I'm not paying postage. But of course, so coming off Impossible Jones, you're about to see some of my brilliant segue skills. I'm literally going to go so fluently into the next conversation. But of course, you're also the creator of King Shark. So how did he even come about? Like you said, flawless.
It was. I mean, I'm amazed.
You might have to sit down, like it just came out of nowhere, left wing, didn't even see it coming. So yeah, King Shark, how did he even come about? How did that character come to life?
Well, I mean, I was working on Superboy, and we had already decided to set Superboy in Hawaii, because I always thought of Superboy as very much a wish fulfillment character. So when I was talking to Tom, I said, well, if you could live anywhere, where would you want to live? And we decided, well, Hawaii, it's like this tropical paradise. It's warm. It's got the ocean. Why not? Let's put him in Hawaii. And it was also a nice, unique setting that was not, duplicating anything else you could see in any of the other comics at the time. So of course you look at Hawaii and you go, what does Hawaii have to offer that no one else does, so that we can make this book very specific to its setting? Yeah. And one of the things Hawaii has is sharks. I mean, other places have sharks too, but Hawaii as an island, it's surrounded by sharks. And not only that, but they have legends, myths about sharks and shark gods and stuff like that. And I was reading a lot about the Hawaiian myths and folklore and stuff like that. And there was a strong, what am I trying to say? There was a very good myth about a shark god, who took a human wife and all of that. And I thought, yeah, we can get a character out of this. We can get a good villain out of this who's a shark and who chomps on people. And I gave him, in the original design, he actually had a tattoo, which was a classic Hawaiian tattoo based on shark teeth. It was a bunch of triangles on his arm. Oh. If you look at the cover of Superboy 9, you can see this tattoo on his arm, which is a traditional Hawaiian shark tattoo. But anyways, that's where he started. He was there because we were in Hawaii and there were sharks in Hawaii, and why not make a shark villain if you're in Hawaii?
Yeah, for a minute you were talking about Hawaii, and I was like, is he going to talk about coconut? Is it going to be King Coconut? There's probably a parallel universe where instead of King Shark, there's just one walking coconut. And
yeah, well, yeah, that might be the universe where I'm a multimillionaire. Maybe that was the idea that would have made me a multimillionaire, the King Coconut.
King Coconut coming next year, starring Brad Pitt or something.
But I have to say, I never in a million years did I think King Shark would be voiced by Sylvester Stallone in a major motion picture. There's no way in a million years I ever expected that to happen. I'm at this point, it's weird to say, but King Shark is probably one of my biggest contributions to the history of comics at this point, which is just mind-blowing, because you just can't plan. You cannot plan these things, is what it comes down to. You simply cannot plan these things. Characters have a life of their own, and I can't take all the credit, obviously. I mean,
Carl? Oh no, everyone, I think he cut out a little bit. We have to wait for him to come back.
I mean, I can't take all of it.
You're back now. What? Sorry, you cut out a little bit. I was just sitting here. I think my internet. Are you back now?
I thought you were just held wrapped by my story, because you were like, I thought you were just like so focused on what I was saying because it was so deep and insightful. But obviously not.
No, I definitely was. We'll go with that. Anyway, so what were you saying there? I was
just saying, I can't take all the credit for what King Shark is today. I laid some seeds. He was in the Suicide Squad for many issues, which helped his popularity. He's obviously been on the Harley Quinn TV show. I mean, somewhere people just started, and it wasn't all just based on what I've done. There seems to be a momentum with the character that keeps building over time. And I'm happy that I got the ball rolling, but many other very talented people pushed that ball along and made it go faster. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but I think, without you, we wouldn't have everyone's favorite walking shark. So what has it been like for you to watch see the trailers and like a character who you're responsible for creating on the screen? Has that?
It's freaky. It's unreal. I mean, I've never had anything like this. I mean, I enjoyed, as flawed as it was, I did enjoy the first Suicide Squad movie since I worked on the comic. And there were moments where, that was really good. That was kind of lifted from the comic. And so, I mean, there was a certain connection there, but this is very, very direct. This is kind of like one of my little babies, and he's gone out there and he's grown up, and all of a sudden he's on the big screen. And like I said, Sylvester Stallone is his voice. That's like, I was like on the floor when I heard that. I thought, that is brilliant. That is brilliant. And never in my million years did I think that would ever happen.
Has it set in yet? Have you fully processed it?
I guess I've processed it so far. It'll be different when I finally see the movie, because then it'll, once again, it just keeps getting a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. I'm really, at this point, I'm worried he's going to die in the movie, and then he won't be in the second one.
You're sitting there like, please don't kill him, Jay. Please don't kill him. Please don't kill him. I think he's blowing up on Twitter. Everyone loves him, despite the fact that he literally killed two guys by ripping them apart.
I saw, yeah.
But he still seems to be a fan favorite. Like, people are freaking out and they're making a profile pictures King Shark, and it's just, it's crazy. But actually, the first time I ever interacted with King Shark, I was 10 years old, and I watched the Assault on Arkham Suicide Squad film. Mm-hmm. He appears in that, and oh my god, I love King Shark, because what 10-year-old boy doesn't love a walking shark that kills people? was like, this dude's awesome. Yeah, I love him. And then me and my friends would run around like pretend we were superheroes, and I'd be King Shark because like it's a walking shark. Who doesn't love that?
I know.
And but he's pretty big right now in terms of not only is he in the film, but he's also in a new video game. Have you seen that?
I no, I mean, I don't do a lot of video games. In fact, I do zero video games, so I haven't seen it.
Oh well, there's a new trailer for it, so we get to see King Shark. Don't worry, I'll play it on your behalf. I'll
Oh,
play
thank you, thank you. So I can go online and like, what trailer for what video game? What's it called?
Suicide Squad killed the Justice League.
Oh, Kill the Justice League. Okay, I have heard of that game at least.
Yeah, I'll bother you with the link later today. I'll send them like, hey, Carol, watch this. Carol, you have to watch this. Guess what? Guess who's in it? I'll send you all these King Shark updates.
That's fun.
I'll fly over to America and knock on your door. Hey, you're not going to believe this. I'll show you a little poster. And so, yeah, I think he's such a cool character. But did you ever expect that while writing him that he would go on to, because you only used him as a villain for one issue and then he went on to become the person we know today. So did you only use him for an issue?
No, I had him in issue 9, and then, like I said, then I did a 3-part story in Superboy that was a Suicide Squad story, but I had King Shark as one of the characters. And that's a kind of interesting story in that at the time, Suicide Squad had just been canceled, and it was a book I deeply loved what John Ostrander was doing with that book. And they canceled the book, and I was writing Superboy, and I said, I want to do a Suicide Squad story. And DC, the people up in management, administrative, editorial at DC said, why do you want to do a crossover with a book that was just canceled? That, I mean, it's not going to attract readers. This book was just canceled. And I said, but I love this book so much. Let me do a Suicide Squad story. I said, all you have to do is let me use Amanda Waller, Deadshot, and Boomerang. If I have those 3 characters, it's a Suicide Squad story.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, you can use those characters. And then I brought in King Shark, and I brought in Knockout, and I brought in Superboy. Everyone else was from the Superboy mythos that I'd been using. So there was a 3-part story with King Shark there. And then later on, when I came back to Superboy around issue 50, what, 5 or something like that, I did another story that involved King Shark. So I used him a few times. Oddly enough, between the Suicide Squad story and the time I did the next story in Superboy, he developed this really huge head, this huge shark head, much bigger than my original design. And they've kind of toned it down, which I'm glad they did, because there was a time it was like as big as his chest. It was this, and I thought it just looked silly. I thought it just looked silly.
Yeah, and like,
but,
what type of shark is he? Is he a hammerhead? No, I know he's not.
No. Sometimes he's been drawn as a hammerhead, but that is not right. That is incorrect. No, he should be a great white, right? I mean, that's the king of the sharks, is the great white,
Yeah, absolutely. James Gunn actually said he was originally going to make him a hammerhead, but it didn't work well because when someone's talking, it's a bit weird if he's just kind of looking down to try and talk to them.
Yeah.
I think
James Gunn is a smart guy, so he knew that was his.
Yeah, I think we could have gotten away with it. But who came up with the actual design for King Shark? Was that you?
I did do the original design. Yeah.
Really?
So I imagine in one of my boxes squirreled away, I still have the original sketch. But
that would make some money. I could imagine that. You probably get, I imagine 50 million. That's probably how the market works. But like,
if only
the original design for King Shark. Yeah, but I think that's so cool. And like, we're basically best friends. So you could say I'm best friends with the creator of King Shark. So, it just happens when you're, book royalty like me. Don't answer that. Don't answer whether we're best friends. I'll leave it up for my own interpretation. But are you responsible for him being a member of the Suicide Squad?
Well, I mean, I did the first story that put him in the Suicide Squad, and why they brought him back later on, you'd have to ask the writer of that series. I assume that writer was looking over the history of Suicide Squad and said, hey, this King Shark character was in this story. Why don't we bring him back? But that may not be the case. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they wanted Killer Croc and the Batman people wouldn't let him have Killer Croc. So they said, well, we'll settle for the
I guess we'll have
to. I have no idea, but I did put Suicide Squad and King Shark, I let them, shake hands for the first time. And then someone else had him, invited to the party for a long term.
Yeah, and I believe that for David Ayer's Suicide Squad, he said in an interview, he originally wanted King Shark, but CGI, they couldn't afford to have a big CGI shark for the whole entire film. So they just kind of went with a humanoid crocodile. But I think the new King Shark looks brilliant nonetheless. So I'll finally get to see him on a big screen. But like I said, seeing some more of my beautiful transition skills, you brought it up, the Suicide Squad. You were also the inker on that comic with John Ostrander. I
Right.
actually got to interview John Ostrander. You see some little self-promotion there. So the Suicide Squad, how did that come about? Did you just get a call that was like, here, want to do this comic?
Well, no, I mean, what happened at that point was I was inking the Legends miniseries that John Ostrander had plotted. He had plotted it and was introducing Suicide Squad in the Legends miniseries. And John Byrne was penciling it. I was inking it. And I was inking these pages and I was just going, the Dirty Dozen with supervillains. Why has no one thought of that before? I just thought it was a brilliant idea. And so I, at that point, I started campaigning to be able to ink the Suicide Squad book. Because I just thought it was such a brilliant idea. Although I will say, I was like going, Captain Boomerang? John Ostrander wants Captain Boomerang, who I thought was like the lamest villain in the whole world. Captain Boomerang. And to his credit, John has this amazing ability to take really bad characters and make them really interesting. Boomerang, in a few short issues, became my favorite character in the book. Whereas, a few months before that, I would have walked across the street to avoid a Captain Boomerang comic. But John did it later on with Suicide Squad too. He took in these, D-level characters, Punch and Julie, who were characters from some obscure Charlton comics, And once again, I was thinking, Punch and Julie, these are like a waste of the paper that they're on. But he and his wife Kim Yale, they made them really interesting and basically psychotic characters that I just loved. So John just has that ability to see things in characters that certainly I don't see.
Yeah, so let me ask you this impossible question, but do you have a favorite member of the Suicide Squad?
Well, I mean, probably my favorite is Boomerang. Yeah, I mean, the character that I still remember, Captain Boomerang, looking at those John Byrne pages going, Captain Boomerang, of all the villains they have in the DC universe, they're using Captain Boomerang.
You just spit on the page. I don't like you. Just cross them out with the inker marker and you move on.
It got to the point where I talked to John and we were talking to DC about doing a Captain Boomerang special that I would have penciled. That's how much I like the character.
Like I can only, so you literally went from hating this guy to absolutely loving him.
Exactly, and it's all because John does magic. John does magic.
Absolutely. And back in those days, did you receive the original pages and you kind of had to just ink the original art?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, I still ink on pages. I mean, here's an upcoming Impossible Jones page. So I still ink on the paper. I'm not a digital guy. I'm just not.
I think that's the first ever original page of art we've seen on the channel. So who better break that in than you? So like, is there a certain sense of responsibility? Like, oh, I can't mess this up. Oh, I better get this right. I better get this perfect. Did you ever feel that?
Well, back in the old day when I actually inked on real pencils, yeah, that was always a fear, because if you mess it up, those original pencils are gone. Nowadays, I mean, David sends me scans of his pencils and I print them out as blue lines. And so if I screw it up, I can print the page out again, or I can even just print out the panel again and, assemble it in the computer. So that, I have to say, that does take a real weight off my shoulders, because I used to worry about that all the time. And if you got it wrong, the pencils were gone. Oh, and how do you get back to what was right,
Yeah, and do you have to have like a surgeon's hand, like you're very careful? You can't twitch too much or anything like that?
Sometimes I twitch, unfortunately. You gotta have a steady hand. Oh, yeah, but I unfortunately my hand's not as steady as it used to be, I would say.
You better hope you don't get surprised if you're.
I know. Well, yeah, sometimes that has happened, where sometimes I get so focused on my work that my wife will come in and I won't even notice it. She'll go, Karl, and what? So no horrible disasters have happened, although there have been some lines. Oh, I gotta wipe that out,
And did you get your start in comics as an inker?
Yeah, I did. That was my foot in the door, was as an inker. But from the very beginning, I knew I wanted to do more. I knew I wanted to write. I've never had a burning desire to be a penciler. I kind of want to be a penciler, but the blank page, it takes me so long. It takes me so long to pencil. And I'm not a fast inker and I'm not a fast writer, but it takes me a lot longer pencil. So just to pay my bills, I'm much better off if I write and ink and have someone else handle the penciling.
Yeah, and how did you make that transition from inking onto writing? Was there one comic that you said, "Could I write this? You know, would it be okay if I got write this?"
Well, I mean, it helped at the time. I mean, it's, you know, it's very different nowadays, but at the time, you know, I lived in New York City. I was under exclusive for DC as an inker, but that meant every single week, and maybe 2 or 3 times a week, I would go into the DC offices, drop off the pages I'd inked, pick up new pages to ink, take them home. You chat with people, you talk with people, and as things come up, sometimes you just say something in passing. And I had been inking the history of the DC universe over George Perez, and he had done a double-page spread of the Crisis, and part of that double-page spread was a little strip of all the characters who had died in the Crisis, and one of the characters who had died was the original Dove character, who was a guy. And I remember inking that, and I even remember thinking, you know, Hawk and Dove, I always really liked Hawk and Dove, but the Dove character was always really kind of just a waste of space. It would have been so much better if that character had been a woman, because Dove, you know, it's a softer, feminine name. It would go better with a woman. And I was living with Barbara Randall, who became Barbara Randall Kesel at the time. She was an editor at DC Comics, and so we were talking about it. We said, a female Dove, that's a great idea. We pitched it, you know, we mentioned it to Mike Carlin. He said we should do it. You know, that's how that started. And so Barbara and I co-wrote that first Hawk and Dove miniseries, which brought in a new artist who, once again, it never went on to do anything, called Rob Liefeld. That was Rob Liefeld's first job. But you know, I think now I guess he washes dishes mostly now.
You have to stop bringing up the smaller names. You know, we have to do something exciting. God, come on, Carl.
But so that was my foot in the door of writing, and from there, little by little, I got to do some solo writing, and eventually Mike Carlin gave me my big break to write Adventures of Superman, which was really being thrown into the deep end, which none of us knew at the time. None of it. When I got the call, they knew they were killing Superman, but no one knew it was going to be what it was. Jerry Ordway probably never would have left Adventures of Superman at that point if he knew what was going to happen.
It's such a shame that Superman's death never grew up to be a big story, because
I know. It just kind of sat on the table. No one noticed.
I had to think about it for a little bit. Wait, Superman died? That's not possible. He's Superman.
No, I guess not.
Yeah, I mean,
I have to say, at the time when I told my folks that that I was working on Superman, and by then the news that he was dead was out, or, you know, was going to die or whatever. My dad was going, how can you work on the book? They're killing the character. I was like, Dad, it's comics. No one dies forever in comics.
That's comics, baby. So yeah, I get into work on like that. So did you know previously that Superman was going to die? Did they tell you that before the actual comic came out and before it's released publicly?
Well, I mean, they let me know when they offered me the job. Yeah, they said, look, we're going to kill Superman. After he's dead for a while, we're going to bring him back. How would you like to write the book at that point? You know? So, I mean, you know, so what?
You have to keep tight-lipped about it, like you couldn't tell anyone about it, or were they just...
I have to, it's hard for me to remember, because I think at the time, no one was really worried about being tight-lipped about it, because no one knew it was going to be what it became.
Yeah.
You know, no one knew it was going to be this thing that blew up all around the world. It was just another good comic story is all it was. You know, I mean, Superman had died before, and Superman probably has died since. I can't say for sure. I don't know. But I mean, characters die all the time in comics. Big characters, you know, die all the time in comics, and then they get better.
Yeah,
know?
like it's so, like we've had Alfred has died in a comic. Like, God, like imagine, like there's literally a whole comic about Alfred dying. So I mean, you know, if you're a comic book character, your odds of survival forever, they're very slim.
I mean, Bucky came back. I thought Bucky was the one character they would never bring back, but they brought him back, and they brought him back in a way that he's very, very popular. You know, you just never say never in comics.
That's definitely right. So Superman, you also got to work on the Reign of Supermen comic, which introduced 4 new Supermen. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. That was my that was how I was thrown into the deep end. All of a sudden, we were working on the sequel to what at the time was probably DC's best-selling comic in decades, if not ever. The death of Superman was just phenomenal as far as sales. So all of a sudden I was thrown into this group of people who were all really great people, really knew what they were doing. And I was thrown into it, and basically we all had to come up with the sequel to this phenomena. That's all we had to do.
Yeah. And so like, how did that work? Did you all kind of pitch new ideas for each Superman? Like there was a robot Superman and there were all these different types of Superman. So did you all just get in a room and like, we should do, and they're like, everyone, and then you were just sitting there like, we should make Superman a shark. No one would see it coming right out of left field,
If only I had thought of Superman as a shark. But no, I mean, really, we, Mike Carlin asked us all to submit ideas, which I did, and I know everyone did. And I do not know when the decision was made, but it was made, because in those days they had Superman summits where they would fly everyone in to New York City, and we would either meet in an office at DC, or they would sometimes rent out a retreat, a conference center that we would go to and get away for a few days, and we'd work out like a year's worth of Superman stories so that we knew how all of the different books interconnected.
Yeah.
And when we went, and this was my very first Superman summit, I went there, and even when I walked in the door, Mike Carlin was saying, more or less, he was saying, I think we're going to do 4 different Supermen. And I'm not sure where that idea came from. That same idea had crossed my mind, but I thought it was so out there that no one would ever agree to it.
Yeah.
But that was the way they went. I have to assume, quite honestly, that more than just me thought of this idea. I think it was a pretty obvious idea when you take a step back.
Yeah, and unfortunately they didn't go for your Superman shark story, but
no, the shark, no.
What can we do? Soldier on.
But I will say, going into the summit, I honestly did have this, idea for Superman, and in my ideas that I had sent into Mike Carlin, I outlined it, and I thought my way of thinking of it was, well, each of the books should have a Superman that reflects their title. And so I thought, well, Man of Steel should be a robot. And there's a great history of robot Superman. And I thought Action Comics probably should be more like a Siegel and Schuster Superman, a real basic Superman, able to leap a tall building, but not necessarily fly. This was my way of looking at the titles and figuring out what sort of Superman would fit in these titles. And then I thought Superman, well, the Superman book must be Superman. It must be the real Superman. That's where the real Superman is. And then I thought, well, I'm doing Adventures of Superman. What sort of Superman is in Adventures of Superman? And I was Adventures of Superman. And then I thought of the old tagline, The Adventures of Superman When He Was a Boy. And I said, oh, I could do Superboy. Ooh. And so that was what I wrote up. And then we went in, and Mike Carlin more or less said at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to do 4 different Supermen. What kind of Supermen can we do? And people just started saying, like an alien, a cyborg, blah, blah, blah. And I was like the new guy in the room, right? So I'm just like sitting there going, how do I, and I have to say, Dennis Jenke, who was the inker on Man of Steel, he said Superboy. He said Superboy before I did.
You're
and
like,
I was like, oh. And so we all got, I honestly do not remember if I ever said a word during that part of the conversation. But then we got down to, this long list of different possible Supermen, and people started claiming, I want to do this Superman, I want to do that Superman. And I said, I would really like to do the Superboy. But Dennis had put the idea on the table. So the courteous thing is that the Superboy idea had, the Man of Steel book had first dibs on that idea, since one of their creative team had put it on the table.
Yeah.
And I said, I would really like to do Superboy. I mentioned, the Adventures of Superman When He Was a Boy, just to kind of show I would have a certain claim to that title, to that character. And Wheezy, Louise Simonson, she was very kind. She goes, yeah, you can have Superboy. She was very kind. If she had not said that, I would not have had Superboy, and my entire career would be different.
Ooh, so who got that King Shark Superman story? Oh, God damn.
We all passed on that one. That's how stupid we were,
Oh God, you just lost millions of profit.
I know.
Can you hear the sadness in my voice? So yeah, now you brought it up, Superboy. You also like to get to work on him.
It was great to work on Superboy. I mean, I had, in many ways, he was the sort of character I'd been wanting to do in the back of my head for a long time. A character who's a little full of himself, still has a lot to learn, but he doesn't think he has a lot to learn. I mean, that's a really interesting sort of character to play with, and also a character who's funny. I enjoy characters who are funny. I enjoy writing, characters who are clever and can say things that at least make me laugh. If they make me laugh, I'm happy. That's what it comes down to.
That's a very good motto to have. But I was researching, like I said, because I'm so professional. I made the sacrifice of reading comics when I should have been doing homework. Don't thank me. It's my.
You gotta have priorities. Yeah,
that's it. I'll have you send an email to my teacher later. Now, so of course, Superboy. I know you've been very. People love the way you write teenager dialogue. I've noticed a lot of people saying comments. Oh, I love the way Kesel wrote him as a teenager. So did you make that a point? I want Superboy to sound like a regular kid.
I was trying real hard. Believe me, I didn't know what regular kids sounded like. I mean, I quite honestly, I'll tell you, in all honesty, I'm touched and honored and flattered that people like how I wrote his dialogue. But I always felt I was second rate to Mark Waid. I thought Mark Waid was the guy who really wrote good kid dialogue. He really knew how people talked. He really knew how kids talked. And many times I would just like go, well, what's Mark doing over there? I can copy that. Because Mark, I think Mark's just one of the best writers the business has ever seen, ever. So
yeah, and it wasn't too bad. This wasn't like, hey dudes, what's going on? It's so rad, isn't it? Let's go stop some like super villains, dude, or anything like that. So I think you got away with it just about. So are you a fan of that optimistic version of Superman, or because he's kind of become, so in the films at least, a bit of a grittier, kind of darker character, or do you like that more hopeful, optimistic version?
I'm more of a hopeful guy. I always prefer the hopeful guy. The hopeful outlook. The hopeful character. I understand the appeal of the darker characters, the glass half empty characters, but it's just not in my nature. It's not in my nature for the kind of stories I naturally write.
Yeah, and did you try and make a difference between Superman or Superboy or anything like that?
Well, I mean, there's the obvious difference of adult and teenager. I mean, one's an adult and one's a teenager. So, yeah, I mean.
Unfortunately, we didn't get that shark story, which I'm going to keep on bringing it up. If anyone's watching, I'm going to get that made someday. I'm going to make that my goal. And like, it'll rip, like, and then King Shark and they end up fighting.
Well, I mean, with red kryptonite, Superman could become still a shark. Superman, just needs some red kryptonite, and then he can fight King Shark. Yeah, that could be a big one. That could be.
Don't give me hope. Don't give me hope, Carl. Don't. So of course we're talking about all these other characters. You also got to work on Daredevil. Some more beautiful transition skills. I know, I'm so good. So Daredevil, anyway, how did that even come about? Did you just get a phone call that was like, here,
that was one of the few cases where I just got a phone call and they said that they wanted to know if I'd be interested in writing Daredevil. And of course I was thrilled. I mean, Daredevil had always been one of my favorite books of Marvel. I mean, I enjoyed Daredevil when Frank Miller was doing it.
Yeah.
But I also enjoyed Daredevil when Gene Colan and Stan Lee and Roy Thomas were doing it back in the 60s. And in fact, there's a stretch in there when Stan and Gene Colan were doing Daredevil. It's still to this day one of my very favorite runs of any Marvel comic because it was just so wacky. There was so many wild things. I mean, Daredevil had two alternate identities. He was Matt Murdock and he was his twin brother, Mike Murdock. This was like the craziest stuff I'd ever seen in comics. And Daredevil would disguise himself as Thor to try to fool villains. Daredevil trying to make villains think he's Thor. What is he thinking? There was just a real wackiness to those stories that I loved.
Yeah, and I loved your Daredevil. I think it's such a fun idea. And so, did you choose to write a more optimistic and like funnier version of Daredevil?
They said that they wanted me to work on Daredevil because they wanted to have more of the old Gene Colan, Stan Lee feel. They wanted to return to the swashbuckler. They very specifically asked me to bring back the swashbuckler Daredevil.
And I believe the first panel is like he's saying, because I'm the devil or something like that. And I was like,
It's a close-up of Daredevil, and he says, "Trust me," and the caption said the devil.
oh damn, that's the greatest opening to a Daredevil comic I've ever seen. I got shivers looking at that. That was so cool. So of course, did you have a trouble kind of portraying a blind character? Did that present any different problems?
Well, I will say it did not present a problem once I switched over to first-person narration. Because the thing is with Daredevil, so much of his powers and so much of what makes him different are his sense of smell, his sense of hearing. These are two things you can't show in comics. You can't show sound and you can't show smell in comics. And I at some point I suddenly decided to switch over to first person narration, and I think it made all the difference. It made all the difference because you suddenly understood how he was seeing the world very differently from anyone else was seeing it in terms of taste and smell and sensation and not visual. But yeah, I mean, it took me a while to get a feel for that, to figure out how to best portray that.
Yeah, did he ever fight a bad guy? He's like, this feels oddly like a shark. And he just starts touching it. And it's like, yeah, crossover time.
Eel. He did fight the eel, but not any shark.
God
no.
damn, I just
close, but no cigar.
But like, speaking of villains, you got to use a couple of villains. Who was your favorite villain that you got to use?
In what? In Daredevil?
Yeah.
I enjoyed Mr. Hyde. He's a good villain, and he was like the first one we brought in. He's a really good one. So that was probably my favorite there.
Yeah, I love Bullseye. He's my favorite there. Only the Colin Farrell version, because all the other ones suck. It's only Colin Farrell. He's the best. I love his just because of course he's just Bullseye. So yeah, but like despite the fact that it was obviously a funnier run, it did actually deal with certain moral ambiguity of kind of protecting someone who didn't commit said crime but did commit a crime, and I really like that. So like you got to work on that for a little bit over a year, I think.
Yeah, I think about 15 issues. I think.
Yeah, and so do you think that like over time you start to understand Daredevil better as a character?
Oh, certainly, it always happens that way.
Yeah, and so like, or maybe has it happened like for other issues, or you just begin to like a character a bit more?
I'm not sure. I mean, I like Daredevil, but as time went on, I figured out more about specifically about his relationships with the other characters. I mean, oh, excuse me, I got a little frog thing in my throat. I mean, one of the things I began to realize about Daredevil is, unlike any other character, really, Daredevil, when he's not fighting villains, and when he's fighting villains, really, the central relationship in his life is his relationship with his friend Foggy Nelson. I mean, the relationship between their friendship is really the core of the book, and they have girlfriends and stuff, and it's I'm not trying to say there's more to their relationship than just friendship, but that's what's so great about it, is they have this really strong friendship, and you don't see that sort of strong friendship in any other book I can think of. I mean, Foggy's been there since issue 1, and he and Matt are really good friends, and they're always there for each other. And I think that is really, at the core of Daredevil. That's really the heart of Daredevil, is their friendship.
Yeah, and I don't think we could come off Daredevil on a better note. Like I said, beautiful transition skills. I'm going to keep on bringing it up because I'm not appreciated enough for my brilliant transition skills.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Can't you hear that? Everyone watching, you better appreciate that. I've put so much time into all these beautiful ideas coming out. No, I'm not going to turn. So Harley Quinn, like I said, clean off the tongue. But you got to also work on Harley Quinn, and I believe that was the first time she ever got a monthly comic.
Yes, it was. It was her first monthly comic. Yeah.
High praise. So how did that come about?
Well, I mean, that was another case of, I was just visiting the DC offices, and Matt Idelson, who I didn't know at all, he'd been recently hired at DC. He said, "Come on in here, Carl. Come on in here. Come in." And he said, "We're thinking of giving Harley Quinn her own monthly series. Would you be interested in writing it?" I said, "Yeah." I mean, I had read the Mad Love comic that Paul Dini and Bruce Timm had done.
Yeah.
And I still think it's one of the best comics ever done. It's just such a phenomenal comic book. Those guys, like, right out of the gate, showed that they understood the medium more than people who have been working in it for 30 years, more than me, certainly. It was just not one wrong move, not one wrong beat in the whole comic. It was brilliant. And
Yeah.
I knew Harley was very popular, and the idea of getting a chance to work on a series starring her, I was very interested in it. And they asked me to write up a proposal about what I would do. And so I sat down and I figured out what I would like to do, and I submitted the proposal, and they accepted it. And so I got to write her first monthly comic, and I was thrilled. I was really thrilled.
And did you have to do any research in advance? Because she only really appeared in the animated series before that. So do you have to, for work, sit through a whole cartoon for work, of course?
I my reference included Mad Love.
Joke.
I have never ever seen an animated show with Harley Quinn in it. Never, to this day.
Not even the one with King Shark in it?
No, I've not seen the Harley Quinn King Shark episodes. I hear they're really great.
How? Come on. Yeah, I'll just pull out my phone and we'll start playing it now and we'll just enjoy it. So yeah, getting to work on Harley Quinn, did you ever think that someday King Shark would appear in not even a Harley Quinn comic, a Harley Quinn TV show?
No, I mean, I didn't see a Harley Quinn TV show, and why in the world would King Shark be on it if there was? I mean, you know.
I mean,
So no, I never would have occurred to me.
I think they only really brought in King Shark because he brings in money. You know, everyone wants to see King Shark. It's like
everyone does, yeah.
Yeah, you know, if only King Shark was a real person, you could just kind of bring him around different shows and like you can pat him for €5 or something like that. Probably wouldn't work out in favor for you. So yeah, another book you worked on was Section Zero. So how did that come about? I believe you kickstarted that.
Yeah, but I mean, it started back in 2000 as part of an imprint at Image Comics called Guerrilla Comics that Kurt Busiek and Mark Waid were the brain trust behind that. They came up with this idea about a certain group of people that they wanted to work with and produce comics alongside. And there was George and Barry Kitson and Mark Waid and Stuart Immonen and Kurt Busiek and Tom Grummett and I, kind of got invited along for the ride. And we were very happy to be with those people. I mean, every single one of those guys are so talented. And we got to do the sort of book I've always wanted to do, which is kind of a Fantastic Four, kind of an X-Files, kind of a Challengers of the Unknown sort of book. And that's what Section Zero is. And we did 3 issues of it at the time, and this is year 2000. And for various reasons, mostly which have to do with me getting divorced, I could no longer continue to work on that book.
Yeah.
And I had to do, because as I said before, Image Comics was not paying me, at least, any money. They weren't paying any of us any money to work on those books. And once I got divorced, I had to work on books that paid me money. So we had to put Section Zero up on a shelf. And it was 18 years later when Kickstarter finally came along. Or, I mean, Kickstarter was around before that, but it was not something I considered seriously until about 18 years later. And then I said, maybe we can bring back Section Zero as a Kickstarter and at least finish off this first story arc. We'd done 3 issues. I knew we had 3 more issues to finish this story. And, I said to Tom, let's do that. And we did. I mean, we kickstarted it, not knowing what we were doing, making a lot of what I would call, serious strategic errors in how we ran the Kickstarter. Yeah. And still, like I said before, in the last day, we raised $15,000, not due to anything I did, believe me. It was just the social beast woke up, the social media giant woke up and suddenly paid attention. And we got funded, and Tom and I finished that first story arc, and it was very thrilling and very satisfying.
Ooh, and so another question I have for you is, if you could work on any comic book in the whole world besides King Coconut and King Shark, what would it be, with any character or anything like that?
Well, I've always had a huge fondness for Challengers of the Unknown, but I'm going to give you a different answer, because now that I've done Section Zero and I can do Section Zero, I'm not as interested in Challengers as I used to be. Okay, because I can kind of do my own Challengers. Why not just do those? But there is one title out there that and it's not a comic book, but I would love to do a comic book sequel to a movie. Ooh. And this movie is the 1950s black and white giant ant movie called Them.
Damn.
I love that movie. Have you ever seen Them?
No, believe it or not, no, I have yet to watch it.
It's a 1950s movie, black and white. It's about giant ants. They're that everything back in the 50s, radiation made things giant. There was like giant praying mantis movies and giant ant movies and all these giant bug movies. And it's called Them, and it's about these giant ants. And I saw that movie when I was like 9 years old or younger. It was just one of those Saturday afternoon movie or monster movie matinees that they used to have on when I was a kid. And so it was like 2 p.m. I didn't have anything better to do. I'm watching this movie called Them. I had no idea what it was about. And it's only a 90-minute movie, but when I was 9 years old, it was like, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And oh my God. And it has always been one of my favorite movies ever since. And it really holds up really well. I mean, it's got a really good cast. James Arness is the star. The guy that plays Santa Claus in Miracle on 34th Street, Edwin Gwynn, something like that. He plays in it. They've got Fess Parker has a small role in it. They actually have a very good cast. James Whitmore, is that who it is? He's another main character. They've got a really good cast, and the special effects are really awful, but it's a really good story, and it's really done well. And I've always wanted to do a sequel to that called Them Again. And,
with King Shark and King Coconut.
And they would fight. King Shark could fight giant ants. I'm all for it.
I'll let you take that idea because I'm very kind. And King Coconut obviously drops down from the roof with machine guns, all Rambo style, firing. But of course, so have you seen improvement? Like, do you look back at some of your earlier inking work or writing work and think, oh, I can't believe I've done that. Oh, this would have been better, or anything like that?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I do. I don't spend a lot of time looking at a lot of my old stuff. I have to say, sometimes what I do is I'll look at old work, especially old inking work, and I'll go, oh, I forgot about that trick. That's a good trick. I should do that more often. Things, little ways I would do, I don't know, flowers or the way I would handle fur or something. And, I just had a trick I was doing 10 years ago, and I've kind of forgot that trick. And then that happens more often than me cringing at what I did. Sometimes I look back and go, why am I not doing it that well now?
And then you kiss a fine picture of King Shark. It's okay. It's worth it. It's all worth it. I'm sure that's how it goes. So yeah, and my last and final question for you, I've taken up so much time. If anyone was looking to get into comics, what advice would you have for them?
You gotta love it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Comics does not pay real well. It pays you, if you're lucky, it pays you well enough to pay your bills. But there's only a few people out there who get rich, and I'm not one of them. I had some good days. I had some good days when Superman died and came back, but those days went away.
Why couldn't he stay dead? God damn.
And I don't think there's anything on the horizon that says those days are going to come back. I mean, for anybody, unfortunately. So, I mean, like comics is like jazz music. I always think of it as jazz music. You got to really love jazz to play jazz music, because you're not going to be playing stadiums if you're a jazz musician. You're going to be playing small clubs, and you got to love that. You got to love the music, and that's what it is with comics. I mean, King Shark might be in a movie, but I'm not making those millions of dollars off of King Shark. King Shark is a character DC owns, and I'm very touched and flattered that King Shark is in that movie. And but I'm still playing the small clubs. But I love what I'm doing, so I don't mind playing the small clubs.
That's amazing. So next is Death of Impossible Jones, just to bring cash.
Death of Impossible Jones by Shark. Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. I'm gonna hold you to that now. Everyone, you heard it here first. Wait, King Coconut makes an appearance in that.
I will say, Daniel, that I have been thinking with the King Shark stuff. I have been thinking maybe I should put a shark character in Impossible Jones. I have been thinking that.
So. You see, I'm an ideas man. It all comes together, They always call me asking for ideas about coconuts, and oh my God, I have to turn them down again and again. As you can see, everyone wants me. But actually, I don't think we could end it on a better note. Thank you so much for coming on. But before we finish up, is there anything you'd like to promote or talk about?
As it happens, I have a Kickstarter going. You may not have known that.
Yeah, you didn't bring it up. No, well, you have a Kickstarter?
For Impossible Jones. And I just want to say it's a story where Impossible Jones teams up with a character called Holly Days. And Holly Days is a Christmas-themed thief. And she and Impossible Jones, even though Holly thinks Impossible Jones is a superhero, she does not know that Impossible Jones is also a thief. Holly does not know that side of Impossible Jones, but they still go out and get drinks. They go out and have drinks together, and they've developed a a very interesting relationship and friendship. And this book that is on Kickstarter right now is about one of their girls' nights out and what happens. And there's hilarity, there's hijinks, but there's a big heart to the story. There's real heart to the story. I'm actually very proud of the story. I think David is drawing it extremely well, and I would like people to see it. So I would like them to go to the Kickstarter and support it and get the book. And I don't think they're going to be disappointed. I think it's a really good story. I don't want to pat myself on the back too hard, but I do think it's one of the better stories I've ever written.
And as fate should have it, there'll be a link for that down in the description somehow. I don't know how.
Thank you, Daniel.
It's okay. I know I'm so charitable. You've only gotten to work for DC and Marvel, so I like helping out the smaller creators like you. Yeah, like I have a huge multi-millionaire industry, and you've gotten to work for DC on characters like Superman. I don't know. I don't know what that is. As I'm sure you can see, it's so kind. No, I'm only messing around. And Karl, it's been such a pleasure having you, and I'll talk to you a bit after this. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure having you. Everyone, go make sure to check out Karl's work. Hashtag We Want King Coconut. Go get that on. But before we finish up, any closing comments? Anything? Oh, actually, are you on Facebook or Twitter?
Well, I am on Facebook. Whatever it is, look up Karl Kesel. You find me, and on Facebook, I'm at Karl Kesel. Yeah. So, or Twitter at Karl Kesel. Those are where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, go follow him, and he will be making those King Coconut updates. He's kind of said that he kind of has to. But yeah,
now I have to. I'm in a corner. I got to. I painted myself into a corner.
You did. You shouldn't have brought it up. That's on you, I think. So yeah, as always, everyone, please make sure to like and subscribe. To go donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. Link for that in the description. But thank you guys so much for watching. Go check out Karl's work. Stay coconutty, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.